Hello, you are listening to Pulseway IT Heroes podcast, a show for MSPs and system administrators.
Hello and welcome to the IT Heroes podcast. Today I have Andy Ellwood, the VP of Product Marketing. And we're going to be talking about what happened last week, which was the Hear from a Hacker webinar. It was an interesting listen. What do you think, Andy?
Yeah, it was very good. There was a lot of he covered a lot of ground, and after setting out his credentials, telling us his almost masochistic attempt to hack the FBI, then it led into some interesting territory. And I think even some of the questions that were being asked implied that the things he was saying were new to some people.
I liked how he talked about having 50 Bitcoin at some stage and spending it on the dark web early days when it wasn't worth much.
When he paid 50 cents for them each.
Yeah. Must be, like you said, it's a bit of a regret, but there's a lot of interesting topics that he covered. And for anyone that missed it, could listen to it by clicking on the link in the description. It goes into quite some detail. You get to actually hear from someone that was actually in the trade of hacking. And some security advice from them. But I had some good topics about patching, for example. Yeah,
mandatory and patch everything. And the fact he sets aside a day every week to patch everything.
Personally, right? It's not even for an organization. It's just for himself. He takes it serious for himself alone, never mind a business. And he puts a time on his calendar every week to patch everything. That's really interesting. I mean, if someone's doing that on a personal level, on a business level, it's a no-brainer, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was interesting when he said that hackers are people just like you and I. They're normal people. They have meetings. The only difference is they're criminals, and so that's normal behavior. And because we should reiterate, he is not a criminal. He's one of the good guys, but he knows how the bad guys think,
which is useful, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So if he's doing patching, we all should be doing. I know sometimes I let it go a day or two, but it's important to have it done in the background by, especially in a business environment, professionally.
Absolutely. Yeah.
2FA. Again, people keep saying this, and some people still don't have 2FA. And a lot of I wish a lot of these companies made 2FA mandatory, because you can't rely on somebody else's security practices. You create a Gmail for someone, they might dismiss having a 2FA. You create an email account to dismiss having a 2FA. That's just easy access for someone.
And the fact that he personally, again, does not sign up to anything that doesn't have 2FA.
Yeah.
If you can avoid it. And it's interesting. I got an email yesterday. It was an invitation to a webinar that we held back in June. A reply to that, which was clearly a phishing attempt. So somebody had got into someone's account, and for some reason were just replying to emails with some very suspicious sounding English and a couple of very dodgy links. So these things can happen anywhere. It's just that I happened to know that was out of date, that email.
Did you fall for the trick?
No.
No.
I reported it back to the IT department of that company.
But if you did, I'm sure you have 2FA enabled, that even if somebody does get your password, they can't get into your account as easy.
Yes.
Wasn't he saying something about the text messages not being one of the safest way?
Yeah, he did say that.
Because you can if you really wanted to, you can interpret the signal or the message being sent if you have the phone number.
Yep, I think that was it. He also said that if you're doing something that's convenient for you, it's probably not the right thing. Yeah. And I had this problem. I was trying to book some theatre tickets, and my bank's enabled 2FA, and I just was not getting the notification. 3 or 4, 5 attempts, and that's just very frustrating because something as simple that should only take minutes, seconds. Yeah. But it was there for a good reason. So yeah, I know exactly what he means.
I actually use disposable credit cards for that. For anything I book online, I use a one-time credit card that self-destructs after one usage, so it can't be accessed again.
Okay.
Anything to do with online purchasing, any site that I think is like not secure, or like a local theater that doesn't have the best infrastructure or something. I remember booking tickets and it was really weird. I just use I use something called Revolut that self-destructs, and never use my debit card anywhere for security reasons. I think that's one of the things I got advice was, I don't know if you ever seen Catch Me If You Can.
I have, a long time ago, yes.
Basically met that guy at a conference. He's like, the only thing he said is like, never use your debit card for anything.
Oh, okay.
Because you're liable for it, and credit cards you're not.
That's true. That is true. Yeah.
It's a 2FA. Good thing at Pulseway we have the 2FA on the Pulseway app itself that's encrypted. The application sends a notification. So
yeah.
I personally use messages, so I'll keep an eye on that if there's an alternative method to maybe using Google Authenticator more often.
Yeah, and just something far more basic, where the advice on how to set a password, and the fact you should change it often and use different passwords. And that person who was fairly certain that, who asked the question, surely the best way is to use your phone number as your password. And he was very quick to dismiss that, saying, no, that's the first thing they'll check.
Yeah.
And the other thing about there being no such thing as a unique password, because someone somewhere has probably done that password, and showed us a couple of examples of that. So they're on a list. If they find the password once, it's put on the list that gets tried against every account. And so the technique of coming up with a wacky, weird sentence that only your brain can think of, but it's one you can remember, I think is.
I switched to that recently. I heard that on a talk as well before, again from another ethical hacker. So a second person in a row said that, instead of use like my dog's dash bought cookies. It's as hard as to figure out as it is like anything else. And it's longer, but it's also easier for you to remember. The problem with using ABD 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now it's the same about security, but it's harder for the user to remember. So you're always having to dig it up somewhere or write it down or keep it somewhere.
Yeah. No, none of us are perfect. Though you sound more perfect than me, of course. But yeah, it's hard. I have my method. Years and years ago, when I was teaching back in the days of where there were courses called Coming to Terms with Information Technology that I used to teach for adults. I would say find a word, or probably should be words now, but misspell it. But only you will know how you've misspelt it. I guess it's the same way that people use numbers instead of letters and things now. It's like it's those little things so it's not just an easy, an easy pattern for people to try and match.
Yeah. All right. But,
and I remember somebody asked, why do they target companies? Which was I thought an interesting question. And his answer,
money.
They pay.
Yeah. Companies have money.
Yeah. And of course, I guess on top of that, they also might have stuff that could be valuable to a hacker as well. But yeah, essentially they pay.
You're not going to target somebody that maybe doesn't have a lot of money or something. That's a lot of effort for very little gain. So you're going to go for and companies are easier targets because there's a lot of people at the company, and they might not be security focused, and you'll have some users who could be a vulnerability. So you could test 20, 30 users potentially for vulnerabilities. They pay. I kind of laughed at the fact he said, I can't advise somebody not to pay the ransom, because we often hear like the FBI or somebody say, never pay the ransom, that just fuels. But if you're a company in that situation and you don't have data, like what are you to do?
Exactly. And I think even kind of unofficially, from what I've read, that the FBI can actually help you even if you do pay. They try and track the money back. I think the pipeline hack, most of that money's been recovered. Colonial Pipeline, I couldn't think of his name. But it comes down to the thing he said, that most of the hacks involve people, and it's people are the problem. And as long as there's people, there's always a chink in your security.
I like the fact, I like that zero trust policy for MSPs that he talked about, and why that resonated is because I actually spoke to an MSP last week, and it was one of the first times I've heard somebody actually implement this, because it's not that common. MSPs don't have a zero trust policy implemented, and what that basically means is your technicians shouldn't know the passwords. You should use a password tool that encrypts it and just places it in, because if your technician or your staff leave and they have access to all the passwords, that's a big no-go. That's something you got to worry about. You got to change all the passwords. What if it's a rogue agent? They decide to do something, you have a bad relationship. So having a good password management tool that stores the passwords, it doesn't reveal it to the user. All it needs to do is import the password from the password manager into the actual portal where they need to log in. But that person doesn't actually need a list of passwords and know what they are. So, because I thought that was quite useful, since I heard somebody actually come up with it. Trust no one.
Yes.
Not even yourself.
Particularly not yourself.
And people like Brian exist because people aren't doing their jobs properly.
Yeah. That's one of the first things he said. That he exists because people aren't doing their jobs.
The scary part was he said the hackers are ahead, in the race. There's like a race of security and hackers, and the hackers seem to be ahead of the curve, and it seems like we're, as an industry, just catching up to them, right?
Well, I guess hackers have only one thing to do, and so they can find new and better ways of attacking us. Whereas the people who are defending themselves, it's not just like that's the only thing they do. They've got other things to worry about as well, like staying in business. And so it is a question of focus, which implies that maybe companies should actually have more of a focus on this sort of activity in the first place. But yeah, I mean, they've got one job to do. They do it, unfortunately, very well. And because they can dedicate their entire life to it, which is why certain rogue states have hacker farms effectively, where they've got people treated like slaves, effectively just hacking around the clock.
Yeah, I wonder, like, if more companies should employ hackers to hack themselves. Their job is solely to try and hack that organization.
I think that's a good idea. I mean, it goes back down to, I can remember years and years and years ago seeing the police forces in the UK where I grew up. They were hiring former burglars to actually show people what was wrong with the security on their house, and it's just another version of that. Instead of just guessing, find out from the professionals what they do.
Yeah, exactly how they do what's easy to them. I mean, that makes sense, right? I mean, it'll give the hackers some ethical jobs as well, right? Utilizing their talents and getting paid legally.
Well,
taxes.
Well, that's the problem. I don't think the ethical jobs will pay as well.
From what we saw on the dark web, some of the job postings, I don't think so.
Yeah, there were some phenomenal salaries being offered.
Yeah, and zero taxes on top of that. But I mean, there's obviously complications with that, how you live your life, the precautions you take, how you spend your money. There's always going to be issues with that. So, I mean, if you want to fight for the good guys, I think more companies should employ ethnical hackers to help them.
Or just teenagers, really.
Phishing is a threat. I think another point the webinar hit on. I mean, that's easiest way to people to get in. Phishing email, people fall for it. even on both a personal level and a company level. You know, I had a friend, his uncle fell for a phone call scam where he gave away his bank information, some pretending to be from a bank. You know, stuff like that. You got to be serious. You know, how genuine is that? You know, no, you should never give away your social security number or, you know, bank information, your ID, your passwords to anyone. You know, no one an official is going to ask you for that information over the web. Always check the links. You know, the landing pages look similar, but the link is going to be different. You know, oftentimes it doesn't have the security little check mark on it. It's not encrypted. The URL will be different, so double check. That takes a second, you know. But
yeah, some of the images can look a bit blurry. Maybe it's a bit, the whole thing is a bit small. I mean, today it would appear my PayPal account's been locked about the 18th time that I can remember, as well as all those parcels that haven't arrived. So yeah, it's and now it's increasingly happening on mobiles. And I had a week where I was getting 3 or 4 scam phone calls a day. I'm old enough to still have a landline, and so they're all on the landline. So we know if the phone rings, it's probably going to be, apart from my mother-in-law, it's likely to be it's going to be a scam call. But yeah, it's one of those things that you just have to practice at identifying what's not right about something. And usually the English, if you're an English language speaker, it is quite often that the hackers are not native English language speakers. So sometimes the language can give you away. Yeah, I had one of those recorded phone scams where they were telling me I was in trouble with the Inland Revenue. But the Inland Revenue is the tax authority of the United Kingdom. I live in Ireland, and it's called the Revenue Commissioners. So I knew it was wrong completely. So they were just, and I think that's the other point. They try millions and millions of times. They only need one person to actually fall for it, to make it worth their while.
Yeah, it's on a scale. So, I mean, I was sharing, I mean, it's so frequent. I mean, a lot of people can tell. I mean, but these are the mass ones for personal ones.
Yeah.
The business ones get a bit more serious. You know, those organizations put a little bit more time to kind of make it one for one. You can tell, like, these, for the personal ones, it's easy. It's bolded, you know, money symbols, you know, who emails like that.
Yeah.
But again, it takes one person to fall for it.
And why would they put it in sterling with the currency symbol the wrong way around? Yeah, there's little things you can often see. But yeah, it was the quality of the English that caught me out. That kind of normally I go, that doesn't sound right. And I get regular messages when I log into my bank telling me that we will never call you, we will never ask you for this. And I think it's been in the last year or two, there's been a big focus on those type of institutions. They are proactively messaging the public and their customers, which I think is a good thing. That's only positive.
Because I'm with Bank of Ireland, and I actually get a text, sometimes a spam text from their own official phone number that gets hacked. You know, but they are proactive about it, saying, you know, we're never going to ask you for these things, and you know, but you know, again, for businesses, these organizations are a bit more serious. You know, they actually take time to draft the email strategy and everything else, because they're targeting a big fish that's worth potentially a couple of million. You know, they're not just doing $1,000 quick win on a personal account here. You know, they're going strategic. So, but businesses are going to get a bit more into the weeds. They're going to tailor the emails. They're going to tailor the messaging, figure out who works there and what, you know, what's your job title, who would you be communicating, what kind of things would you be asking for. You know, if you hack somebody in the finance, you might email, you know, somebody about, hey, I need approval on this PO. Can you check it? Log in. I might even do background research, because I can pull this information. I can know what company and what software they're using. You know, I need, you know, whatever says Zoho, you know, I need approval here, log into Zoho, here's my password, and it might be the same password I use for my email. Then, you know, I can spread the virus, etc. So, I mean, it's definitely worth a listen.
Absolutely.
Webinar. So, any final words, Andy?
No, I just think it's it's not that scary. A lot of it is common sense, but as they say, common sense isn't that common. But a lot of what he said is practical advice, and it could even, if you are having trouble, if you're trying to implement some decent security in your organization and you're getting pushback from other parts of the business going, why do you need to spend this money? It could actually help give you some validation for your efforts, and actually help you get the budgets you need to put in the security training, particularly, and the other measures that you would need. So yeah,
if somebody actually asks you at work that question, why do you need to spend more on security? That is exactly why you need to spend more on security. It's because people like that, who don't understand the danger and the world we live in today, and the potential damage it could do for a business,
Absolutely. There's still a lot of it won't happen to us. It won't happen to we're too small.
Well, it's exactly who the target is. It's easier smaller companies to get into, so because you'll have less of a barrier,
Absolutely.
So, all right. Well, thank you again for tuning in. If you want to hear what Brian had to say from the Ethical Hacker session, click on the link below and enjoy the session. We'll chat to you again.
Okay. Bye.